Would you have played Sony's 2012 flop, All-Star Battle Royale, if you'd been able to join battle as Cloud or Sephiroth instead of them doubling up on Cole McGrath? No, because that game was still just a soulless ripoff of Super Smash Bros. But regardless of that analogy, something like that could potentially happen in the near future, as things have certainly been changing over at Square Enix over the last year or so. Now, before we go further, no, I personally do not think that Square Enix is going to be sold to Sony anytime soon. I do think there is a lot of smoke here, and where smoke there is fire. Things are definitely happening with Square Enix. That was made abundantly clear when they started selling off Western studios. But I think that we may still be pretty far away from any eventual deal. Now, I could be completely wrong in this though, because if you would have told me that Blizzard Activision was going to be sold to Microsoft, I would have probably said you're crazy. Sony and Microsoft appear to be gobbling up a lot of real estate in the gaming space lately, with the most recent moves by Sony pushing them into live service games even more, something they're very interested in and could give them the appetite for a behemoth of a game like Final Fantasy 14. This might be something Sony needs to do to compete with Microsoft's recent high-profile acquisitions of Bethesda and Activision Blizzard, among others. The first salvo may have been the purchase of Bungie back in July, but Sony could be looking to acquire more and raise their profile and really compete with Microsoft. But there might be some competition, and there might be some specifically around Square Enix. Let's back up to May of 2022 when we're all shocked by the sale of Crystal Dynamics, Square Enix Montreal, and Eidos Montreal. And yes, I'm probably getting the names of some of those wrong, but you know which ones were sold, right? It's the ones that have Deus Ex and Lara Croft, you know, pretty big IPs. And they were sold for a measly $300 million. And while that's an astronomical amount to people like you and I, for a gaming sale, that seems a little low. But they weren't sold to Sony. These Western studios were sold to Embracer Group. Embracer Group previously went by Nordic Games and has begun to make a name for itself by quietly gobbling up rights. These purchases included the rights to strong IPs like Tomb Raider, Thief, Legacy of Kain, and Deus Ex. And as I alluded to, back when this purchase was made, it raised some eyebrows with the mere $300 million price tag, especially compared to Embracer's own purchase of, say, Gearbox for $1.3 billion, the makers of the Borderlands franchise. So what made Square Enix so eager to sell this studio?
Let me check it out at once. Try to keep up.
Oh, solid point. Now, Square Enix did make it sound a bit like they were just kind of shedding some dead weights at the time of the sale, as it would, quote, enable the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields including blockchain, AI, and the cloud. But around this time, that was when the rumors of Square Enix being sold to Sony were kind of at their peak. That was prodded along by an interview with Eidos Montreal founder Stefan by GameIndustry.biz, in which they mused over the sale of the Western studios, saying there was mounting pressure from Japan on its foreign developers to produce better results commercially in what was described as a train that is slowing down and in need of a fresh injection of cash. In that interview, rumors were brought to light about Sony's reported interest in purchasing Square Enix. Kind of. Now, not the larger company of Square Enix, but Square Enix Tokyo is what Sony was reportedly interested in. This is significant as Square Enix Tokyo has their hands deep in some of your favorite series, like the Kingdom Hearts series. But some recent successes for Square Enix may bode well for its continued solo existence. Final Fantasy 14 has been doing extremely well in the wake of their Shadowbringers expansion, having to cut off digital sales for their game at the end of 2021 because there was such an influx of players, it was straining their servers. Now, you can say what you want about how they should have been prepared for this and have the infrastructure they needed, but they did eventually start to go about doing that by upgrading their servers over the latter half of 2022 and will continue to do so into 2023. Final Fantasy 14 has even come off awards from the Game Awards show and others, and is looking at a very bright future with potential future expansions on the way, as well as a graphics revamp. And that's to say nothing of Square Enix's upcoming single-player games, which may be very enticing for many buyers. They have very attractive assets, so it makes it very clear why some companies like Embracer Group and Sony would be interested in purchasing the studio. But recent moves make it look more like consolidation than preparation for a sale. although at times those can be used interchangeably, as consolidation can often be referred to more as new management. So while I personally don't think the actual Square Enix is going to be sold anytime soon, I wouldn't be surprised by seeing more sales outside of their core. And who knows, if Final Fantasy 16 doesn't do well, or if certain other projects they have in the pipeline fail, they may be forced into it. But further complicating the sale of Square Enix to Sony is that Sony already benefits from its relationship with Square Enix, with many of its major games launching exclusively on Sony's console. Now, I could see that if Sony sees some other company potentially swooping into Square Enix, maybe then you might see Sony try and avoid things like what happened with Activision Blizzard, and Activision Blizzard going over to Microsoft, being bought out by that, complicating certain things with not having Elder Scrolls 6 on Sony platforms, for example. But that's a whole lot of speculation, and it involves a lot of things that I am really not aware of. It's just me sitting back and kind of with the popcorn thinking, oh, hey, well, this would be interesting if it happened. But beyond that, and beyond talking about, you know, the gradual decline potentially of Square Enix, they do both have some great potential, Square Enix and Sony, for having a really good 2023. For Square Enix, the aforementioned success of Final Fantasy XIV has to be a major boon for the company, as well as the Final Fantasy VII remake, and later in 2023 on June 22nd, we will be getting the long-awaited Final Fantasy XVI, which already has quite a bit of hype around it. And for Sony, they have been scoring big with exclusives like God of War, and they're looking to expand into the live service game with other games like Destiny 2. They have an unannounced but leaked MMO in the works with NCSoft that will be bringing Horizon Zero Dawn to the MMO space, so they have a lot on their plate as well. What do you think, though? Is there any chance that Sony will be purchasing Square Enix in the coming couple years? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.